said, this will only be sent to the participants this morning, not to anybody else. I just want to emphasize that this is your space. I'm really happy to facilitate it, but this is really your space. And if there is an expectation outside what we just spoke about, we can absolutely adjust as we're going along. So if you say to me, you know, I'd really like a little bit more of that, or we can adjust to that as we're going along. But maybe just to throw out a few what would you like to get out of the 4 sessions? What would you like to go away with that you didn't come in with? So a few of you said that you were kind of invited to join the sessions. Why do you think you were invited to join? Archie?
For me, it's just sharing knowledge and updating what's current and what others in similar organizations are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always
So
a good reason.
Essentially sharing best practices.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else?
I think for us, we're trying to kind of make a shift of like almost of the understanding of the work that we're doing from kind of, oh, we just kind of run social groups or do this kind of support, to a more kind of like holistic perspective of the work that we do in terms of like community development. So I'd love to know more about it and the approach. Just yeah, from that perspective.
Okay, very good. So you're sort of making a move from support to development, really. So yeah, that's a great shift to be making. Yeah, yeah. Anybody else?
Well, because I'm in Dundalk area, there will be involved a good few cross-border projects. So I suppose, to me, I found out, you know, to build the network and to get to know the people and, you know, doing the similar things and collaborate with each other. Yeah, I think.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Very
for
good.
me. Okay.
Anybody else? Sometimes we might have to come back to this question, you know, as you kind of get into it. Sometimes it's a difficult question to kind of grapple with at the start, because you're thinking, oh God, what's all this about? So if there's nobody else, we might come back to that, maybe even next week, and talk about it next week. But hopefully the broad nature of what we've kind of designed will work for that. Just where's this? Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background on the community development program. So all of the projects and organizations that you're involved in are members of the community development program network. So there's a network, and that's where we come in Community Work Ireland. We facilitate that network. So it's a pilot program that was launched in 2021. And for the first time in years and years and years and years, there was a real focus on community development. And that was very attractive to the likes of ICON and Culture and Donegal Intercultural Platform and a load of other projects, because they would have been very involved in other programs, but the community development program allows them much more flexibility and autonomy in what they work with. And then the 7 projects that were initially funded were recently enough joined by 3 others. So we have the Amal Muslim Women's Association, we've Tiernan here from Amach LGBTI plus organisation, and we've the Limerick Traveller Network. And all of the projects are working with different communities. So they're working with travellers, new communities, women in substandard private accommodation, such as ICON, disabled people, Muslim women, now the LGBTI community. But they're all coming at it from a similar approach. So they're all of the work of the organizations, so they're working with different communities, they're all using the same approach. And I think that's what's important about the program and important about the network. In terms of ourselves, we were established in 1981, and we're a national organisation that promotes and supports community work as a means of addressing poverty, social exclusion and inequality, as a way of promoting, protecting and advancing human rights, and ultimately achieving social change that will contribute to the creation of a just, sustainable and equal society. That's a very long sentence, I know. We're a membership organisation. We do loads of things with our members, like networking, learning opportunities, etc. So you can absolutely feel free to join us, and I'll be circulating this presentation afterwards, and there's a link to the Join Us page on our website if you feel that's something that you would like to do, to get on the database, to hear about different things that are going along. The other thing I just wanted to say at the start was that there will be a certificate for these 4 sessions. So we have a sister organisation called, another long one, the All Ireland the AIEB, the All Ireland Endorsement Body for Community Work, Education and Training. And they do this, they provide certificates of what's called continuous practice development. And this will qualify as a continuous practice development opportunity. So there will be a certificate from AIEB and ourselves at the end of the 4 sessions. But maybe just to kick us off, just to have the broadest conversation that you would like to have about what is community. When somebody says to you community, what does it actually mean to you? I'm just going to take a few notes. Just think about it for a second. What does, like, you hear it all the time. When you hear politicians using the community, you hear different people using the community. But what do you think it actually means? What does it mean to you?
I think a community, when you were growing up, was what you based it on, was where you lived and the area, the vicinity that you lived in. I think since the pandemic, it's taken a whole new aspect that has developed a lot more. I think people came together, like really opened up to everything that was going on around you. You never really took notice of it before, probably because you were working or you were taking the kids to school or you were busy, a mother or whatever. But I think since communities now are much closer.
And that's a really good point, Joyce. You know, obviously your first touch of community is where you were born, you live. Yeah. And you're saying there that the pandemic kind of changed that slightly from maybe an outward look, going to school, going to work, to more an inward look to the place that you lived. That's a really good point. Anybody else? What does community mean to you?
I think I agree with Joyce as well, but I do think it's, how do I put it, that we have actually opened up our communities as well. And I'm speaking as an Irish white person, you'd say, that we, I hope I don't offend anyone, but that we are open more, you know, and we're more inclined to adapt to different nationalities and different traditions, say, you know, it's not all about the Irish Catholic tradition, that especially we're learning from our children, that in school, you know, you listen to different, you know, religious celebration and you're open to that, you know what I mean? So for me, community is allowing people to live the way they want to live. It doesn't always happen, that's not what I'm saying, but what I am saying is that I would have a broader horizon. I'm learning from the next generation as well, you know?
Yeah, really good point. Yeah, and it's so rich. Like, the possibilities are so rich now with different people coming into different communities, and also that, you know, recognizing that people were always, you know, there was always diversity in communities. Yeah. Anybody else? What does community mean to you? When you hear the word, what does it mean to you? What does it invoke?
Well, to me, I think the community means that, you know, that people who live together, and also, you know, not only who live together, I think there will be, you know, they share the similar or the common interests and or, you know, the characters, and regardless, like Anne-Marie saying that, you know, our colors and your nationalities, and we share the same kind of interest. And I certainly doesn't belong to, you know, the born and bred Irish community, but I'm really blended into that because I share with my neighborhood and the place I'm living now, and you know, and my kids, they're here, so you know, it's a part of it, and you know, I will be included as a member of the community, and not rather than excluded. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like inclusion. Yeah.
Yeah. So inclusion is a really important word there. Yeah.
And just while you were speaking there, I was thinking of connectivity, because we are connected. Do you know what I mean? I do find for people to say that, you know, need to address poverty and stuff, we don't always know how to connect, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. But we are getting better at it, maybe.
Yes, you're
Really
right.
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is when we share in it, and you know, they promote the understanding, because we probably never know. And you know, for example, I wouldn't know too well about Irish religions and you know, the traditions, that sort of a way, because I never experienced that. I wasn't baptized, and but my kids, they're here, and they gone to school, and from their religion class, even they didn't gone through that stage, but they were educated that way, and it helped me to understand that. And now same with the Muslims group, and so we kind of like know more about the Ramadan, and not just you read from, you know, the internet or from the books. So it's something, you know, in person, and very personal experience sharing. Yes, I think yeah, Anne-Marie, you're very right. You know, the connecting and the sharing, and it is very important in the community.
Yeah. So inclusion, connection, sharing. Anybody else?
Hi everyone.
June?
Hello.
Hi. So for me, I agree with what Pink said, and also I think community work means collectivity. Community means collective people, like in a space, togetherness. It doesn't have to only be a group of people. It can even be the shared culture that we have that brings us together as a community, or the information we share can bring us together as a community, or the support we provide can stand as community for me. And even the change we prove to do in the community can stand in the world community. So it depends on the angle we are looking at it from
Yeah.
my own perspective.
Yeah. Yeah. Really good. Yeah. Okay, quick question. Can you be a member of more than one community, do you think?
Yeah.
Of course, we have, for example, I'm originally from Nigeria. I'm a member of that community. And I'm also an Irish. I'm a member of the Irish community. I'm a migrant as well. I'm a member of the migrant community. I'm a mom, so I'm a member of the moms community. So when we celebrate International Women's Day, I'll be rooting for women, saying we are one. So community comes in different faces. So it depends on how you align yourself or what you link yourself with and how you see it. Is it looking at it from the position of an individual or a group, or from the position of an individual in the community trying to move for change, or trying to support the community for a better future for the people, or looking at it from the angle of the children? Maybe you're a children leader, you work with the children, so you're part of that community as well, like you're the community leader and you're part of them.
Yeah.
So it's like what they said, like being in the community, they say we rock the boat while we are in it. So for you to rock that boat, you have to be in that community.
Yeah. 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 Really good point. Anybody else?
I think,
Really?
sorry, I think, I mean, what's kind of interesting about, say, the LGBT community, for a lot of people, it's a community that's kind of found rather than like that you fall into, I suppose, or something there's like a sense of community that you're born into, where you grow up and who you grow up with, or your national identity or something like that. But I think for the LGBT community, it's kind of different because it's usually found a bit later in life.
Mhm.
And it's also something that you probably won't share with your family. It's something that, you know, your LGBT identity is what bonds you with the community. But there's also, that's only one element of a person, of course.
Mm.
So it's really interesting in that it's incredibly diverse, because it's your LGBT identity makes you part of the community, and then there's of course all the rest of you, which of course ties you into all the other communities. So there's incredible overlap and intersection with the LGBT community with other communities. So it's always very interesting to see where those overlaps happen, and I suppose the like niche communities also that grow from those overlaps.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I really like the idea of, you know, finding your tribe. Because
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people are looking for their tribe, especially if they're coming from a place where other members of the tribe are not visible. And sometimes you need to go searching for that. Yeah, really good point. Anybody else want to jump in?
Sorry, I just want to say, based on what he said, I think community can also be looked at from the difference we share in the space in terms of what he said. So we can look at even for those that are marginalized.
Yeah.
So they are part of a community, whether they are in our community or not. That's also a community.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. You know, marginalized people might not feel part of the community. You know, many travelers would say they don't feel like part of the community. I'm sure loads of LGBTI people don't feel part of different communities that they may be part of. So I think that's a really good point in terms of marginalized communities. I'm just going to share this again just for a few seconds, and we'll okay. So just in terms of, you know, the old definitions, a community is a social group whose members have something in common, such as culture or heritage or place. So I think you've hit on all of those things. It's about physical location, but it's not just about physical location. It can be sharing a culture, sharing a heritage. It can also be around a group you join, you know, because you want to join. So people living in one particular area, or people who are considered as a unit because of their common interests, social group, or nationality or culture. So all of these things make up community. So I think one of the key things to say about community is it doesn't remain the same. It changes. Anne-Marie, I think you really hit on that. Community changes and we change, and sometimes we reach out to different communities as we grow, as we change. So you may become, you know, for one reason or another, you may become a member of the disabled community when you weren't a member of the disabled community before. You may select to identify with one part of you more at a different stage in your life. So it's not static. It's always changing. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. It's always changing. So when we think of words or images associated with the word community, we might think of things like network, people who are like-minded, and I think you've come up with a really nice set of words: inclusion, connection, sharing, collective, intersection. So these are all words that we think of, you know, or community. There's generally kind of a good feeling around community, would you say?
Yes.
Yeah, does it kind of make you feel, what does it make you feel when you think of you belonging to a community? What does it mean? What does it say to you?
Put you in a good place. You know, like that you feel included. You're broadening in I'm getting it wrong, your horizons. Because you have to be open. We have to be open-minded. But again, there is the, you know, the non-inclusion in community. I'm not just saying it's all, you know, flowers, what have you. And
Yeah.
that's, I suppose, why we're here today. I could be
Yeah.
wrong, but to, you know,
Actually, you haven't been wrong yet, Anne-Marie, so keep that up. You're doing really well. No, you're dead right. So if we look at some of the kind of really nice things, it's helping people. Again, especially during COVID, we really began to see the value of care within the community, of helping people, of supporting people. There's such thing as community spirit, when people get together and they do something in the interest of one member or members of the community. We talk about ourselves as members of the community. And that's really important, because to be a member of something means safety. There's a safety in being a member of a community. There's a kind of a feeling of coming home. There's a feeling of home when you talk about community. And all of these things are very, very true. But so is some of the things Anne-Marie started talking about there. It's not moving on for me here. So we talked about that, like words have meanings, and some words also have a feel. So the term community is one of those words that makes you have a feeling. It feels good, whatever the word community may mean. It's good to have a community, to be in a community. It's like a roof under which we shelter in heavy rain, like a fireplace at which we warm our hands on a frosty day, which is Bauman, a really kind of a invoking, what's that Danish haggy or something, where it's windy outside but you're nice and warm inside and you've got cozy socks on. That's what communities means to most people. Before we get on to the other side of community, can we name some of the communities that you're a part of? I mean, you think you've started doing that, but let's just name some of the communities. So everybody names at least one community. Some people are quieter than others. So everybody needs to name at least one community.
Do you mean by area or organisation?
Anything you think, because you can be a member of more than one. You can be a member of 10, 12 communities. So what community? You're obviously a member of the Dublin community.
Yeah.
Would you say you're a member of any other community?
I suppose I did live in Dublin city centre. I now live about 20 minutes away, but I still feel connected to the inner city. Probably through ICON, which is a great organisation. But although I'm 20 years living where I live, I probably still feel like a bit of
you still feel that pull.
The new.
Yeah.
But yeah, I suppose I'm still connected to the inner city and
the
values from my childhood and stuff like that. But I would be part of ICON.
Yeah.
And then I've done courses in, say, DULC, which is part of the community as well. So I would be part of DULC. It's DALC. It's an education centre. But yeah, I feel part of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And ICON in a lot of ways, and a lot of community work organisations are like this. They're more than just organisations, they're communities within themselves, because that's what they evoke. That's the type of value that they evoke. Okay.
It's the broad horizon, the personality of people in it. Yeah.
Babalola? Are you there? No? Archie?
For me, it is also about the local community. In addition to the local community where I live, it would also be workmates, because that's where we spend majority of our time.
Yes. So it's really important to have that sense of community in the place that you work. That tells you, the place that I work kind of reflects my values, reflects what I want to see. Babalola, did I see you putting yourself or turning on your mic? Oh, turned it off again. It's up. Your mic is off now. So did you want to try and switch it on? There you go. No, we still can't hear you. You can put anything into the chat as well if we're having trouble hearing you. Shireen,
So I feel part of Future Star Parents Group Community is a organization that supports diverse families, especially targeted at migrants with children with disabilities, or we say additional needs. So I feel part of that, and I'm one of the core members. And I feel part of the women's community, cross-cultural women network Island here in Dundalk. And I feel part of so many communities. I feel part of my church community. I feel part of my family. My family is a community on its own. So I feel part of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Good. Yeah. Joyce?
they are not all but okay.
Yeah. Joyce?
Yeah, I do think and the word community has changed so much. I have a friend and all she ever says is unity within community. And I think, as I say, going back to the pandemic, where I live and the way things were formed from it, especially surrounding the elderly, we became more involved with them, like running bingos and just afternoon tea out on the roads, making it more that they were included. They weren't just basically sitting in their homes watching TV. We were taking them out onto the roads, and there was difference. The younger children was getting involved in with the elderly people, storytelling and all that. So it was a great bond for communities.
Yeah.
And I do think you can be a part of numerous communities.
Yes.
You have friends, work colleagues.
Yeah, and you can change, or you can put more energy into one community over another at different times of your life. Yeah, really good, Joyce. Ping?
Well, I agree with the other things that the location and the job related, and obviously that was and also say I'm the member of the local CUDAS, so that's interest, so music, and yeah, and also like Grace was saying that the moms group and the mommy and children's groups. So yeah, and our social roles and the different, and also I'm involved in local craft community, and so I think there was more related to your interest apart from your job and your location. So your interest and your passion, so people sharing the same things together. Yeah, that's a few groups that I've involved in.
Yeah. And I live here in Connemara for the last 24 years. But yet, when I go home to Cork, it's just, there's a sense of knowing, there's a sense of, knowing things. And when you grow up somewhere, there's a different way of getting to know a place, I think, when you grow up there, as opposed to somewhere where you move. So yeah, that's like, it can change all the time. Kieran? Galway community?
Yeah, even, well, I live in West Side, so mostly West Side specifically, which is nice. I was even thinking this morning, I called into West Side Resource Centre where our office used to be, and it was so lovely just going back and chatting to everyone who works there, and this sense of like, oh yeah, it's so nice that I live near here and I know everyone in here. So yeah, I suppose West Side and Galway and the LGBT community. And I think what's interesting about that is, I suppose, being part of the LGBT community, it's not like geographically related to any particular place. So in a lot of ways, it's a very international community, which there's kind of the local Galway LGBT community, but then there's the Irish level, and then just internationally as well. Yeah.
And there's that sense of being recognized and welcome for who you are, and I think that's really important. And the LGBTI community, of course, is made up of several different communities within itself. Yeah.
Exactly.
Did everybody get a chance to talk there?
No, I've been having
Sure.
problem with my mic, so I couldn't even participate.
We
But
can hear you now.
Thank you. You know, it's amazing how, you know, one person can feel the need and feel that they're welcome within various different community. So you don't feel, you know,
Yeah.
secluded or by yourself. So I'm a part of the Jamaican diaspora community. And that's lovely. So when I go to Dublin, I feel at home because I lived in Dublin for about 17 years before I moved here to Donegal. You feel at home, but at the same time, when I'm here in Letterkenny, I can still say I feel that sense that I'm still home, right? And a community is where you allow yourself to feel comfortable, right? It's not just various different values, but for an individual person, it's how you allow yourself to be in that community, in that space, right? So I'm a part for on and also with the Donegal Intercultural Platform, we also have another community in that one, which is called the Women of the World, where we have all women coming together, you know, sharing their different values, country stories, and all the various different things that, you know, make us who we are. And that is absolutely, you know, important for us as a community worker also, and as a member of a community, that we can work together, you know, despite our different values or different beliefs, we can still work together, you know, to make one common goal. So that's very important. So being part of a community is not just to be there or to live at a place, is to actually take part within that space to make yourself feel at home. And
Yeah.
that's the importance of a community.
Really well put. Really, really well put. I think there are some communities that you're a part of by default because you live there, you were born there, or whatever. There are other communities that you join, that you choose for at different times of your life. You choose to be part of a community, and I think that, you know, community is essentially about assuming an understanding, not having a feeling that you don't have to explain yourself, that you can assume and understand. Like a lot of travelers would say, for example, that they love being in the company of other travelers because they don't have to explain themselves. There's just that understanding. Sinead?
Yeah, like that, I'd be the same. I'd have like the icon community. I would have my work, my other work, like I'm a preschool teacher, so I would have the school community, and then I would have the communities that would be involved with my own children, like the Irish dancing community. I would have the Gaelic community. I have a daughter that's LGBT, so I would go to a lot of events that would include the LGBT as well. And then like other commitments outside with my local community, and
Yeah,
then what I actually co-run one of the groups that's involved with women that have children with additional needs and autism. So like for me, going to meet these women on a Tuesday morning to have a cup of tea, to catch up with them, kind of gather information from each other that help the other parents at home, like to deal with situations
yeah,
that they wouldn't come across at home and things like that. So for me, community is just everything
yeah,
from aspects from high level to low level. Like
yeah,
as Joyce was saying, like we live in Dublin One. Like Dublin One is one of the discriminated areas of
yeah,
Dublin, but coming together during the pandemic, looking after your elderly neighbours, looking after the children, making sure the children were happy when they hadn't got school. Like I ran classes outside on the street for the children that on the street. Like I done disco classes, I done stuff like that for the kids that they were involved. Like I ran a party in the cul-de-sac just to have them engaging with each other. It's just the community spirit in Dublin One is even higher since the pandemic. I know there's a lot of discrimination around the area now with the local riots and things like that, but for a community, Dublin One, I think, is the best, and it will continue to be the best as
yeah,
long as the community is getting together and keeping everything together. Like,
yeah, Yeah, brilliant. If you could just hold on to that really warm community spirit that came out a lot in the pandemic, it would be absolutely brilliant. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely hit the nail on the head. You know, a lot of that sense of, you know, that dynamic nature of communities. So yeah, we've spoken about all of these: communities of place, communities of interest, and communities of identity. So community of identity would be communities such as the LGBTI community or the traveller community. You don't really get to choose. You know, this is your identity. And then we've spoken about communities of interest and community of place. And I think what you really touched on is community of place can really merge with community of interest. You know, that it's not just that you live there, it's because you're actually choosing to do things and to be part of that community as well. But just the other side of the coin, like, are there, we've started to touch on it there. Is there anything negative? Do we think of anything negative when we think of community?
Suppose conflict, or like inner conflict in communities, or conflict between communities.
Yeah. Like in Dublin 1, you'd be getting whatever. Yeah, that.
It'd be
Yeah,
more discrimination for Dublin 1.
Yeah.
And I
In what
suppose
way?
people, sorry for interrupting you, Jesus, sorry, Sinead. I suppose
All right.
grown up a certain way, as in you grew up in your community, and you know, anyone new coming into the area, people don't like change more so. And I think that can have a negative on the community.
Yeah. Yeah. Sinead, did you want to finish
No, it's
up your
just the
thinking?
discrimination against Dublin 1
Yeah.
because they class us as a disadvantaged area.
Yeah. Anybody else? Do you think the far right would consider themselves a community?
They would in their own heads. But whether we agree with that is, you know, definitely not. I wouldn't see them as a community, but it's like everything. If you're part of a group, whether we agree with it or not, they believe. So it's everyone's different beliefs that you have to acknowledge. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So just because you don't agree with something doesn't mean it's not a community in that group of people's heads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, you know,
Yeah.
that's where I think, and I can see from a child growing up in, you know, the 80s in Ireland to where we are today. I mean, if I even try to explain whether it be about the church or the unmarried mother situation or the LGBT, my child would look at me like, what's she talking about?
Yeah.
But what we grew up in, not, you'd say 40 years ago, is not the Ireland we're in today. Thank God. You know, we've grown, and we've grown quite quickly. But then there is the communities that have the, you know, they're against colour, they're against nationality, they're against anything. If some people, they just can't open their minds and they can't broaden their eyes, and you know, so there's always the negative, but I hope the positive comes through more, you know.
And
Anybody else?
sorry. And so when I listened to the, you know, the conversation, I was thinking, say when you mentioned about Dublin, you know, Dublin 1 and, you know, the north of Dublin and the south of Dublin, I think to people, there was kind of like, to me, the first reflected, you know, the safety, because, you know, probably, you know, things that could happen anywhere. But if people would think in certain area would be more, happen more frequently than the others. And particularly in Dublin, in the north and the south, and see that, I think they were saying that the social inequality and particularly in economic ways. And never seen that in the house in the south, and it will be different prices and over the north. And so, economic wise, economic, the inequality, and so there will result in the social inequality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
That would be
absolutely.
certainly that was kind of like, the negative. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? And I'm going to apologize to those of you who can't turn on the cameras, because sometimes I can pick up on cues that people want to speak by seeing them. So if you do want to speak, just turn off the mics and or turn on the mics and just jump in. Archie or Joyce or Shriel or June Grace or Babalola. No. Okay, we can stop again in a second. I mean, I think that's it is a reality that community isn't always positive for people. And some people can experience communities in very different ways. Like people can experience discrimination. The far right, they would consider themselves a community and they would say they have shared values. They wouldn't be our values, but they would say that they do have values. And somebody mentioned there, being, I think it was you, Anne-Marie, being a blow-in after years and years. I've lived here for 24 years. I will always be a blow-in. And even though I speak, because I live in the Gaeltacht, even though I speak Irish, I'll still be a blow-in. My children tell me I can't speak Irish at all because my Irish is from Cork and theirs is here from Connemara. So, there is, and that sense of not wanting to change, that sense of locals only, there's no doubt about it, but community isn't always good. And there are people left outside our communities. Travellers would say they're left outside our communities. Again, people from Dublin 1 would say they feel excluded from other communities, and certainly migrants can feel excluded. And that's why I think that, the likes of Cultpur, the likes of Icon, the likes of Amach, the likes of, all the projects that can be, a bridge that breaks down some of those prejudices and also provides a space where people feel safe and feel welcome. I think it just shows how really important that type of community work is. And I think that one really good example was the way Icon responded to what happened in Dublin before Christmas and the riots that night. I mean, Icon responded in such a responsible way. They were able to condemn what happened, whilst at the same time, protecting the young people in the community that had gotten caught up in all of this. So I think having a community development project, in all of these areas that we're talking about is absolutely critical. There is no doubt, though, that some communities.
And also, sorry, can I put in?
Oh, you can, of
Sorry,
course.
I'm on the go, so if I'm in and out, I'm very sorry.
Not at all. Jump in.
And also another thing as well, we can be in a community or living in a community and not actually be in it. Do you understand? That's why it's so good to also have community workers who can help people who are scared, to get themselves involved in the community for some shape or form. Like you have people from the outside who come in, say they come into, like refugees or stuff, and their way of living is different and they don't know how to connect. So we can also have people who live in a community who are not really in the community. They're very
absolutely
scared.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
That's what's good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm
and I would
walking.
often think about, in Donegal, if the Donegal Intercultural Platform wasn't there, what would happen to these people? They would, it's just that welcoming space, and it must just be such a relief to people who don't know the system to realise that Cultpur is there, or that Donegal Intercultural Platform is there to help them, and that's their job. And I think it must be such a welcome for people in lots of ways. Who do you think the communities are?
And I think we're doing a really good job. I just think that, without community workers, the community itself would suffer. You know what I mean? Because we as a people, we understand what it is like, to get people together, to mesh them, especially if they're not from the country. Right. So it's so good as a community workers to understand your role, to understand the different types of community, to know how to work with them. and to just to express to them that they're all welcome. Because in that way, you can have a more sustainable community. Do you
Yeah.
understand what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But and you're right. I think it is a reality that some communities experience more disadvantage, more discrimination, more marginalization than others. Who would you say some of those communities might be? You've already said people from Dublin 1 experience discrimination on the basis of where they come from. Like travellers would say that they still experience high levels of discrimination and disadvantage.
The Black minority would say that as well.
Yeah. People living in direct provision who are, you know, not all Black, but they would also say they would share that experience of being outside the community.
We can also say women as well in some aspects, like for some spaces or representation that we don't have power to influence some change.
Absolutely. I mean, we can take, you know, you kind of assume things are better for women, and they are, there's no doubt about it. But when you look back, we've never had a woman Taoiseach. Never. You know, we've only had a very small, I think it's 2 or 3 women Taoiseach. You know, it's and although we've had a couple, we've had women presidents, but there's no power really in the presidency. So where there is power, very often women are absent, or certainly in the minority.
That's true.
And yeah, and I'm sure, Tiernan, you would also say, you know, minority of openly LGBTI plus people in areas of power, getting better, but slowly. Yeah. Yeah. So there are still communities that experience more marginalization and disadvantage. And I think that's a really important thing for us to acknowledge. And that's largely why community development exists, is to work within and with those communities.
Yeah. Can we also say, sorry to button, can we also say the disabled people?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And
You can.
also migrants as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You can absolutely say that. Like if you look at you know, even some of the figures around disabled people, the high levels of poverty that disabled people experience, as opposed, you know, in comparison with the general population. But you probably also say that about travellers. You probably also say that about a lot of people living in inner city Dublin, etc., etc. Like I'm not trying to say one over the other. And this is where community development comes in. So this is where we're talking about community development. And when we're talking about community development, we're talking about 2 things. We're talking about task and we're talking about process. So the task is what we are trying to do. So when we talk about community development, we're talking about change. Like you guys that are working in and with ICON, it's to make positive changes for the community and for different elements of the community. The same about Culture, same about Donegal Intercultural Platform, all of the projects, they are trying to make change. They're trying to make things better, not just for 1 or 2 people, but collectively. So changes in policy and practice, because, you know, you can get people coming up to you and they're, you know, they're saying, you know, this doesn't work for me, that doesn't work. But if 100 people are saying to you, this doesn't work for me, then you need to change it at the top. So that's what the task is. The task is positive change. And when we talk about process, it's how we are trying to make the change. And it's about looking at a way that ensures that the people affected are included in the conversation, that they get to participate in decisions, and that their experiences inform the work, that they feel empowered and energized as a result of involvement. Does that make sense to people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so when we talk about community development or community work, you know, they're the same in Ireland, they're exactly the same thing. So sometimes we say community development, sometimes we say community work. We're talking about change. We're talking about change for the better, but we're talking about making that change in a particular way. So it's like baking a cake for somebody, or showing somebody, or baking a cake with somebody. So if you bake a cake, they still have the cake, but if you bake a cake with somebody, there's much more of a change. I know that kind of anomaly went sideways on me, but it's about working with people, not for people. You're not working for somebody, you're working with them. So when we talk about community work, it means about, so in ICON, if you're talking about women with living in families with disabled children, it's not just working for those people, it's working with those, bringing them in. It's letting them develop their own spaces, starting with facilitated spaces, but moving into independent spaces. It's about making change at a collective level. So it's not just about working with Mary or John or Susan, it's about working with the community. And very often that work to make change within a community means working at a policy level, whether that policy level is local or national. And I know ICON, for example, have done loads of work around the precarious, the sort of dodgy nature of private rented in really substandard accommodation, and how unsafe that type of accommodation is. And whilst this, ICON started with working with people who were affected by that, and will work themselves up into trying to make change at government level so there's better conditions. So that's what community work is. Does that make sense to people?
Mhm.
Any comments about that, or would you like to say anything about that?
It makes sense. Can I say something? So I think what I picked from it is like working with people at the level they had, and then also when you work with people, you're not just telling people what to do, but you're working with them in the ways they want you to help them or look at things. And then there's a more deeper understanding, more deeper connection, more resolute possible solution comes out of that.
Yeah, exactly. And we in community work, we talk about starting where people are at. So you start with where people are at. So sometimes we say, community work is about collective action. It's about working within groups. It's about working within communities. But very often you actually have to start with supporting individuals, because you have to build up the respect of the community. You have to build up the trust of the community. And you can't do community work when people, with the Roma community, for example, in Longford, there's a community development project there. They're only now beginning to be able to do the community work bit, because the Roma community were in such dire circumstances that they had to do the one-to-one work to build up the trust. But now they're getting to a place where they can begin to do the community work, that collective action. But it's very often based on building that trust, and that trust sometimes can only be built by supporting people where they're at. Does that make sense to people?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not about being stuck. You're not stuck in providing, one-to-one support or, problem solving. You might start there, but you're trying to move on all the time into the collective bit, into the bit that makes change for more than one person or two people or three people. And when we think about, words, when we'll be coming to looking at the VAT, because all professions have standards. I mean, Sinead, if you're a preschool teacher, that, that profession has standards. In community work, our standards are value-based, and we'll be coming to that in the next session. But generally, in terms of words, in relation to community work, we're talking about words like empowering. We're talking about togetherness, which again, that word inclusion. We're talking about learning. We're talking about hearing experiences. We're talking about hearing opinions. And we're talking about looking at the system, working the system, and eventually changing the system. Now, that's not quick. That doesn't happen quickly. But if you look back, sometimes you have to look back really to know that there was actual change made. If you look back over the last 30 years in relation to the traveller community, for example, where it was all settled people talking for travellers. Now it's actually very rare that you'd have that. It's mostly travellers talking for travellers. And so you kind of have to look back really to see progress that has been made. I think you can say the same, especially where there are community development projects in different areas. You see migrants speaking for migrants, you know, instead of white Irish people talking about the migrant experience, you now have migrants talking about the migrant experience. So sometimes it's only when you can look back that you can see progress has been made, because on a day-to-day basis, you're thinking, oh, Jesus, is there anything ever going to change? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Any questions or comments or statements or words or? No? Okay. Okay, well, that is us for today. I am just going to, I'll put this up and then I will take it down again to ask you the questions. But just in terms of how you're feeling after the first session and what are you taking away with, and then a decision about starting at 11 or 11:30, whichever you would feel you would prefer. So what are you feeling? What are you taking away, if anything, and either 11 or 11:30? And I'll email everybody to let people know what your decision is. So how are you feeling after the first session? And is there anything that you're taking away with you?
I would prefer the 11 o'clock if that suits people. And then not knowing what I was being invited to. We've sat here and we've spoken about community, but even though I can't see some of the people's faces, I feel like we've got a little community thing going on here now. And it's good. It's good to discuss, you know, the different things. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to the next 3 sessions. Like,
Good. Thanks, Anne-Marie.
I will second that as well. The 11 o'clock is great for me as well. And I enjoyed today's session. It was really informative. And as she said, I'm looking forward for the other 3 sessions as well.
Good. Thanks, Shereen.
I will have to say goodbye because I'm at my other meeting now. So I'll see you guys next week.
Yes, lovely to meet you. See you next week at 11.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
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 June Grace?
So
You've
it
landed.
was really good. Yeah. So it was really good and it was refreshing for me. So thank you very much. And I'm
And do you
looking forward to
prefer?
the next session.
Great. And is 11 okay with you?
Yeah, 11 is fine with me. It's
Yeah,
fine.
great. Great.
See you next week. And nice meeting everyone virtually.
See you next week. Anybody else?
Yeah, 11 o'clock is fine with me. And
Great.
like Anne-Maria said as well, yeah, great session. I'm looking forward to the next couple.
Good. Anyone else?
Yeah, 11 is fine for me.
Great, Archie. Great. Hope to be able to see you next week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll do a bit of a reflection maybe to start next week, because people are obviously in a hurry to get back to whatever you need to be doing. So let's start at 11 next week. I'll email everybody. I'll put this up on a private YouTube, because it's easier than just sharing the link, and you'll have it to look back on. And also next week, I'll be looking for your addresses or an address, because I'll send you out a copy of the standards I was talking about and a poster of community work as well that you can put up as a backdrop. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. It was really lovely meeting you, and I'm really looking forward to next week. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye.
thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.